Hello everybody, I am the Indoor Adventurer. You are watching Simple and Keen, and today we are going to be diving into the history of living campaigns and the origins of the Adventurers League. Before we begin, I feel like we should first go over what separates the Adventurers League content from what most people consider to be the standard for Dungeons & Dragons. First, while many popular depictions of tabletop games show groups often playing in a basement, graveyard, or local Steam vent, the Adventurers League is a series of ongoing sponsored events which began in 2014 that is typically played in a brick-and-mortar storefront, at conventions, or in some situations even online. Second, while it is possible to maintain the same play group while playing Adventurers League, one feature that is presented in this style of play is that as long as your character is of a similar level as other adventurers at a table, then you will be able to join in for the evening. Third, since you have the ability to traverse across the tables like your Rick Sanchez with his portal gun, players are prevented from giving certain items and gold to other characters to prevent doubling up on magical items, and also to promote a sense of teamwork, as once an item is obtained, that item is effectively bound to that character. Fourth, since it is possible for a Dungeon Master to also be playing Adventurers League, there is a system set in place for the Dungeon Master to still gain experience for their character, even if they are running a game and not directly playing in it with their character at the time. There are often numerous distinctions between campaigns played at home versus those that are officially sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, but the real difference is that Wizards wanted players to be able to take their characters through other adventures at sponsored events to help progress that character's personal story. While the Adventurers League started in 2014, the origin of this style of game actually goes back to 1989 with the publication of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons module Gateway to Ravensbluff. In Gateway, players were introduced to what would be described as a living gameplay experience. With this module came the emergence of the Role-Playing Game Association Network, which had initially only handled events at conventions. But with the launch of Ravensbluff, this would be the first time that the RPGA would allow for anyone in the country to participate in the same game. Players were able to play through adventures in Ravensbluff however they wanted, but if they wanted to help contribute to the overall story of the city, they could send in anything from new NPCs to entire adventures to even just local legends surrounding the town. If the creator of this content followed the guidelines listed in the back of the module, they had the possibility of seeing those creations in issues of the Polyhedron news zine. As I have mentioned in previous videos, one of the things that I love most about tabletop games is that they bring people together for the aspect of communal storytelling, and I feel as though the ability to share your creations with all of the other Ravensbluff regulars really helps solidify that idea of communal storytelling. While most modules up until Ravensbluff tended to be more geared towards laying out the overall adventure at hand, the living city of Ravensbluff instead featured roughly 40 pages of detailed descriptions on non-player characters, as well as solidified the socio-economic standing of the city to give an open play experience to players as long as they followed the general rules of the game system. Some of the initial outline were things like you couldn't portray evil in an attractive light, crimes couldn't be described in a way to promote imitation criminals, and also that things like real-life religions shouldn't be attacked or discriminated against. I especially like the idea that you could include evil things in your campaign as long as they were made to seem unattractive, as this module came out after the wave of satanic panic had set in over the United States. So it's really easy to see these rules as a preventative measure for anyone who is wanting to point towards Dungeons & Dragons as harmful or promoting a villainous mentality.
It's nothing but a witch hunt.
The living world of Ravensbluff would lay out the groundwork for the next variant of this style of living game through the creation of the Living Greyhawk campaign setting. While Ravensbluff was centered out of the Forgotten Realms and only included one fair-sized city within the limits of possibility, the Living Greyhawk campaign was premiered at Gen Con in August 2000 and would use the newly minted 3rd edition rule set to begin what would become a 7-year worldwide campaign, as the RPGA network no longer was strictly tied to North America. Instead, countries like Belgium, Japan, and even South Africa were able to participate in the fate of the world of Greyhawk and have their actions be as much a part of the world as anyone else. What Wizards of the Coast did for this living setting was assign real-world locations with a location in the game world. For example, if you created a character from the country of Ekbir, your character would effectively be from France, as France had been assigned this region. During my research on the video, I actually found that Wizards of the Coast still has a repository for all of its information from the Living Greyhawk campaign up for free. Furthermore, when I searched for the country of Ekbir, I was pleased to see that most of the visible information is actually in French as well as English to help the spread of information among international players. And in 2005, we begin to see Wizards of the Coast using the Living Greyhawk setting as a method of introducing new books during story arcs for the campaign. For example, Wizards would announce the new story arc for Greyhawk that takes place in the Brightlands, which was a sprawling desert inhabited by scorpion people, and then also announce the release of a supplementary book like that of Sandstorm, which contained all sorts of useful information about inhabitants of desert regions and even gives the option for several scorpion-themed abilities. The fate of the world of Greyhawk would become sealed once Wizards of the Coast announced 4th edition, however, and soon the Living Greyhawk campaign would come to a close, soon to be replaced with the Living Forgotten Realms campaign. If you go to the Forgotten Realms wiki, you can still find all of the old adventuring material for the Living Forgotten Realms, but it looks like the Living campaign was much closer to how Greyhawk was structured. For the RPGA, they had grouped regions on the map based on a continental scale rather than being nation-based. No longer would France and Germany be in different in-game regions, but under the banner of Northern Europe, they would be responsible for the goings-on in the Dale Lands. Even though I understood the reasoning that the RPGA would want to exercise in streamlining the overall process of trying to filter events based on the community in different regions around the world, I still kind of wish that there were region-specific events, as a player from a real-world setting would be able to look at a location on the map of the in-game world and point to a place that they had helped secure from the forces of evil that sought to do harm. The Living Forgotten Realms setting would run for yet again 7 years before it also came to a close with the release of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and the Adventurers League. In terms of scope, the Adventurers League seems like it also doubled back on what the Living Greyhawk setting provided, but I feel like overall, playing through the entire world would have been a very difficult task to manage. Scaling down even further from the Living Forgotten Realms setting, the Adventurers League focused on the areas around the Sword Coast region of the Forgotten Realms, and in doing so cleared up a lot of the restrictions that players had during character creation. As mentioned earlier, players during the Living Greyhawk campaign setting had their physical location tied to a location within the game world, but this actually created a problem for players. The RPGA made it so players had mandatory time units to help regulate a player's progression through the campaign, so overall they wouldn't be able to play with that character for a longer period of time than anyone else. One rule relating to these time units was that if you were playing in a region different than your character's origin, you would essentially be spending twice the number of time units to play your character. And once these time units were depleted, you wouldn't be able to play that character until the following calendar year. By simply focusing on the Sword Coast, Wizards of the Coast could ensure that a player's character could be from any region throughout the Forgotten Realms without a real-world consequence in terms of gaming restriction. Furthermore, even though the Sword Coast is smaller than an entire world, its cities and locales are all so different that it still makes for an incredible experience in knowing that you and your adventuring party are able to make a difference throughout the world of Faerun. And speaking of making a difference, I wanted to say thank you all so much to everyone who has helped get the word out about this channel. I really enjoy reading comments and getting interaction from all of you, so keep it up, and who knows, one of your suggestions may find itself to be my next video topic. So remember, keep your blades sharp and your wits sharper.